Well, good day guys. Welcome po sa my first reaction video. Of course, I've been contemplating doing reaction videos for the longest time, but just have no opportunity. But ngayon, today rather, I would do my first reaction video, which I actually as a posting. I did it like 2 nights ago, June 25, when I was when I and the video that we will be talking about is the interview of Maria Ressa with HardTalk and Stephen Sackur. I have to speak in English because I think this video is for my own attempt to answer or to call her out on her several misconceptions, and I think it's empirical that I speak in English so that the international community will understand. I might be, least popular considered to her, but I think if people answer her and people call her out, um, we would have a better understanding of the situation, di ba? Of course, to all my friends, this will be posted in Facebook. Of course, this will also be posted in YouTube. So please follow my YouTube at Bruce Kuday, Bruceday. Okay. Let's find a way. Let's find out the video at this point, my friends, and let's of course, every now and then I will stop and I will talk about it. I will react. I'll say something. Of course, it will not be it will not be malicious. It will not be vulgar, because I believe that in order for us to have better understanding, we have to at least speak and speak properly and talk and be civilized in our discourse. Okay, let's start. Mhm. Wait, have to. First time, like a virgin. Okay. Oh, God. Let's start. Oh, I can hear it.
This is the strongman style of political leadership than President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines. He has a visceral dislike of independent journalism, and no one knows that better than my guest today, Maria Ressa, founder of the Rappler online news website. Now, she has just been convicted of cyber libel in a Manila courtroom. So, is Duterte's populism strangling press freedom? Maria Ressa in Manila, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Let's start with your personal situation. You have, earlier this month, been...
Ayan, tingnan mo. Napaka-fresh ni Maria Ressa, oh. Pero hindi ko alam kung mukha ba siyang babae o mukha siyang Indonesian. Mukhang Indonesian, di ba? She looks like an Indonesian, and I don't know. She doesn't look Filipino, but I think maybe it's my prejudice talking. So, but of course, it's common knowledge that she is a dual citizen. She's an American and she's also Filipino, which of course our mass media is not allowed to, well, it's a case that is still to be decided by the Supreme Court, wherein a dual citizen will a dual citizen be allowed to own mass media? Well, let's see. Let's continue.
Convicted on this charge of cyber libel, as they're calling it. Has it changed things for you?
Aside from the emotional roller coaster and the fact that we've crossed yet another divide, I think I'm pretty much on the same road I've been on for the last 4 years, which is really standing up for my rights, both as a Filipino and as a journalist.
Oh my God. Standing up for your rights as a Filipino, as a journalist, and his emotional roller coaster. Really?
You're on bail, and I think your legal team have said there will be an appeal. Do you, in any sense, feel frightened right now?
Stephen, I've gone through this when you've been under attack for 4 years, as we've been.
Okay, let me stop you there. You have not been under attack for 4 years. You started the attack, girl. You started calling us. You started getting out with fake and verified news. So who started who? It was a counterattack, girl.
There have been all these stages. It's like the stages of grief, right? In 2016, we were pummeled on social media, exponential attacks.
Girl, you were pummeled in social media. You were the one who started pummeling President Duterte. You were the one who started creating all those negative news. And in fact, if you look at how the diversity of your articles, many of whom were an attack on President Duterte. So why are you saying that? That's weird.
Extremely visceral and takes you by surprise, the viciousness of it. And those same narratives in 2017 come out of government's mouths. President Duterte himself then began to equate journalists with criminal. And
Not all journalists are criminals, dear. President Duterte never said that. He said that journalists, some of the journalists, including he pointed you out, Rappler, are are not doing uh, anything to at least propound journalism in the country. Remember, you were the ones who started making articles that are unverified. I'm a victim of that. I know, just
then in 2018, 11 cases and investigations. I was in and out talking to officials. And 2019, the filing of these cases. I have 8 arrest warrants against me that were filed.
Okay, in the meantime, let me reiterate that the cases that were filed by on cyber libel were cases by King. It's not the president who filed the case against you, and of course the other cases pertaining to let's continue.
Year. That was only last year. And I was arrested twice, detained once. I feel like Alice in Wonderland, and I'm down in a rabbit hole. I'm going out, and I'm going to walk out. This verdict that happened on cyber libel, a story we published before the law we allegedly violated, was even in effect. Cements it now, right? That 2016, their journalists are criminals. In 2020, after the weaponization of social media, the weaponization of the law, now I'm convicted.
Well, please take note, Maria Ressa, that you are a fact checker on Facebook. So even if it's true that there is a weaponization, first of all, you can fight it. You can fight back. Secondly, who weaponized whom? Remember, 2016, nobody knew the power of social media. So that's weird. And remember, these are matters that are, this is not an attack. This is basically, it's when you published 2014, but you republish it through republication when you change several things when you edited it. So what's the problem?
That's the death of 1,000 cuts of our democracy.
Oh my God, death of 1,000 cuts. Ang taas. Oh my God. Ang taas naman ang tingin mo sa sarili mo. Death by 1,000 cuts.
There is no doubt that it is not just you that has suffered from repressive tactics coming from government agencies. We can all see that. But nonetheless, the notion that all sorts of freedom of expression are now curtailed and eliminated in the Philippines surely isn't right. If one looks at your country today, there is still a multitude of diverse opinion across the spectrum of politics. See?
Precisely. Ay, naku, Diyos ko. Precisely, number one, the reason why she can talk to you, the reason why she can go in and out of the Philippines, the reason why there are so many people who are talking about divergence of opinions against the president, um, is proof that we are free, and the press freedom is not curtailed. Oh my God, what's her answer?
Different platforms on the media, not least Rappler itself. After all, your website hasn't been shut down. It
Ayun!
continues to this day. It has millions of eyeballs on it every single month. The Philippines is not North Korea. Nothing
Burn!
like.
Who
Burn!
would want to be North Korea,
Ra-
right? In the
Not
end,
responsive to the
the
question.
Philippines is also living under a climate of fear and violence. In fact, when I last interviewed President Duterte, when he
Okay, climate of fear. Who's fearful? You're talking like, you're talking and attacking the president. You're coming in and out of the country, and in fact, you are given special treatment because you are singled out to interview the president. So remind me why there is fear. Maybe so pagmumukha mo.
authority president. I was one of 4 journalists he gave an interview to in December of 2016. I asked him that specifically. I said, Mr. President, now that you're in charge of actually protecting the Constitution, is it necessary to use violence? And he said, yes. He said,
Oh dear God. Of course, it's necessary to use violence if there is rebellion, if there's terrorism. My God, Maria, don't take it too literal. You're a journalist. You should know. You should know words. You should know hyperbole. You should know attack. You should know feelings. God.
it's necessary to use violence and fear. So while you see what looks like a multitude of voices, imagine that those voices also have a Damocles sword hanging over their heads.
Okay. Is it? I do not see anything wrong if there is fear in the citizens. It compels people to action. Of course, we are in a democracy. There are so many ways of letting people follow. You inspire them. Either one, you coerce them, meaning you use fear. Of course, you use fear in ruling. That's the reason why the revised penal code there are punishments and imprisonment because, of course, the fear of punishment. Is it wrong, Maria Ressa? Oh my God.
During our pandemic, people were, based on their posts on social media, people were arrested. I think there's a good veneer of legality for all of these, but we've certainly felt the walls closing in. In order to be able to continue publishing as Rappler, look what I've had to go through.
Girl, you are not supposed to be publishing as Rappler because remember, your company is supposed to be closed, but you are still allowed to publish. Why is that? Secondly, under the veneer of the pandemic, uh, what are you talking about? Of course, the reason why there's how can we be arrested when in fact we're already imprisoned in our homes? What's what's the freaking point? And that's the reason why we have to agree to disagree that there are basically clearly reasons for the curtailment of rights because we are under a pandemic. My God.
I'm not
No,
a criminal.
I
I'm
understood.
just a journalist.
And obviously,
You're not.
my show is called Hard Talk, so I have to take seriously the charges against you because, as
Absolutely.
you've indicated that the libel is the least of it. You still face allegations of, my goodness, what a list: fraud, tax evasion, receiving money
Right.
from the CIA. I mean, you could be in court for years and years to come.
Well, the only thing I can say is that these charges, the 8 criminal charges I'm facing, fall into 3 buckets. The first is cyber libel. The second is securities fraud. And in that, we'll throw in foreign ownership or foreign control, something violating something called the anti-dummy law. And then the third is tax evasion. And again, just like the first case, we were charged with tax evasion about 6 months after we received a an award from the government for being a top corporate taxpayer. Then a little more than 6 months later, we're tax evaders, push on social media. And in addition to that, to make this charge, they actually had to redefine Rappler from news organization to a dealer in securities. So sure, let's do hard talk. I feel like as a reporter, as someone running a news organization, I give the government and the president the respect that the office.
Okay. Boys. Kasi gusto ko naman. First of all, tax, remember, you claim to be a dual citizen. You admit to that. And under our laws, we don't really know if you're allowed to be owning a slice of mass media. Secondly, well, when you say securities fraud or any corporate problems, tax evasion, that's not press freedom. There might be a reason. There might be a justifiable grounds to charge you with those things. But that is not basically something that is considered to be an attack on press freedom, because not all of the media practitioners and even TV and mass media stations are charged with this. In fact, many and majority and even perhaps almost all of the mass media companies are not charged with anything, especially tax evasion. Maybe you did commit tax evasion, and that's the reason why you were charged. At least you were given a day in court. You charged me with being with you there's an article written about me where you said that I was being paid by the government to be part of the propagandist of the administration without interviewing me. So you're doing some injustice. What makes you special now when others charge you with tax evasion? You never even gave me a chance to explain. Hypocrite.
Ants, I think, but the kinds of death by 1,000 cuts that we've had to absorb.
Bakit pa paulit yung death by 1,000 cuts? Ano ba yan? Why? Maybe you're, oh my God. Are you masochistic? Do you want to be, I don't know, it's something that I feel that you prepared for this. You want to make it, you want to be martyrized, or you want to be seen as a hero in this fight, but girl, it's so obvious that you're just creating this this facade for you to become the face of international dissent of the Duterte administration.
Just to do our jobs, just to continue doing investigative reporting. I've never lived.
What the F? Investigative reporting. As I remember, you even made a painting or a graph of me included with I think with TP and with Mocha and Secretary Martin Andanar, saying that we're the triumvirates, paid propagandists and paid trolls, without even asking for my side, without even asking for any proof, or without even getting any proof, just saying something, making up stories. So investigative journalism.
Anything like this. And I covered Southeast Asia's transition from authoritarian one-man rule to democracy, starting here in the Philippines in 1986.
Well, it doesn't change the fact, Maria Ressa, that even if you had a good run as a journalist, it doesn't mean that you will always be good. It's non-sequitur. It doesn't follow, dear.
Ressa, do you think the Filipino public care about your fate and indeed the fate of other journalists in your
Some
country?
care.
If one looks at
I don't.
Duterte's approval ratings, they are consistently above 80% approval, the kind of figure that other leaders around the world could only dream about. And the Filipino public are well aware of what he's doing to the press.
I think there are two answers to that question. The first
Really? Two answers? Tingnan nga natin.
one is the kinds of the propaganda machine and how it uses technology.
Okay. Propaganda machine. Can you please prove that, Miss Ressa? Because you have always been saying that, but you cannot prove for a fact that there is an organized propaganda machine. And granting without conceding that there is, there might be some people who are practicing that, aren't you not in power with regard to Facebook and other social media to actually be fact checking those things? Remember, you are the ones who fact check these matters. You can actually, you can actually shadow ban me in Facebook. You can actually shadow ban people. You can actually ban and suspend people in Facebook. You can actually mass report people. So who has control of the propaganda machine?
Essentially, use it as a behavioral modification system. And I can explain that more later. But the propaganda is exponential and it lifts. When you hear President Duterte is the best, the defender of the poor, even though it's the poor who are dying in the drug war, right? So,
Okay. First of all, it's not mind conditioning because most of us do not really agree. Most of us never even talk with each other before we supported President Duterte. Secondly, if the people are people are praising the president, then people are praising Pinoy in the past, and you never said it's mind conditioning. No, you're using you're using mainstream media to uplift your candidates, to uplift what people politicians you like. So there is, it's not mass conditioning. It's just it's just people doing public press public relations. And what's wrong with that? If you use mainstream media, if you use the TV, if you use you online publications, it's okay. But if you use social media, it's not.
that's the first step. I think, the age of social media, statistical surveys haven't been able to keep up with these shifts. The second one is, do people care? Yes. And I can see that just based on what's happened. And I think this in particular in 2020.
Okay, do people care? Go to the places that are poor. Go to the places. Go to Mindanao. Go to Visayas. Go to these areas where where you can see people who are angry, and people who are supporting the president because they have been tired of all this bullshit in politics and in government. Go there. See if the people care. Because you're only saying that, you're only making these assumptions because you can make those assumptions because they readily believe you, but we don't. Convict.
Three things have happened. We've had a pandemic, the lockdown. We are just in our 14th week of a very security driven militaristic lockdown.
Hey, every lockdown is militaristic. What do you want to do? Who do you want to back us up? Unlike the police and of course the military, who do you want to back us up? The priests, the Boy Scouts. Oh my God, Ressa, please.
It's a lockdown when President Duterte has told Filipinos to stay at home. And he told troops that if they come out, if we break quarantine, he told them to, and this is a direct quote, he said, shoot them dead. That did happen.
Again, President Duterte was saying that if they will fight back, shoot them dead. He did not say just shoot them dead. Kamukha mo si Ogie Diaz. Loka. Again, everything is taken literal, very literal.
almost more than 60,000 people have been arrested during this.
Okay, now that is something that is that has no bearing, no backing, no statistical record, no records to back it up, and you can just open your mouth and say 60,000. Where is the 60,000? I said, I think the PNP should call out Maria Ressa and ask her where did she get the numbers? Where is the 60,000 coming from? Because you can just blurt out a number. Just blurt out a number.
And because we're locked down, I think there's been more introspection. The second is the
I'm going to
shutdown.
stop.
Okay. Sa stop daw kasi parang hindi maganda. Tama.
If I may,
Yeah.
because it's fascinating what you're saying, but I'm just wondering where your evidence is, because I look at the latest polling I can find in the Philippines. There's a company I'm sure you know well, Social Weather Stations, who are widely respected, and their measurements suggest that the Filipino public as a whole approves still of President Duterte's campaign against illegal drugs. They still seem to favor him, despite all of the controversy about his latest anti-terror law, which you and others have described as a fundamental threat to freedom of expression.
That's the third one, right? That's the third one I was going to say, this anti-terror bill.
You have to get real in a way. Everything you say about what Duterte is doing is not deterring a really big majority of Filipinos from giving him their backing.
Ayan.
I think you have to look at the surveys and actually talk to the people who do the surveys.
Wait. If you talk to the people who do the surveys, then they should have said that the survey by itself is wrong, or it's slanted. Well, they're doing the survey, they're asking the questions. Now, what's the problem? Nakakaloka tong babaeng ito, uminit na ulo ko ha.
And the biggest question you have to ask them is, how do you count for fear? So before we went into lockdown, this was a question I asked.
Okay. If you ask the question, what do you count for fear? Girl, we are under a pandemic. We are under a society wherein drugs are prevalent and drug addicts and drug lords are killing the people. Of course there's fear. So what do we do? Do we tremble? Do we not fight back, or do we not even be fearful? Because of course fear makes us act, and actions, to protect ourselves. So what do you want to do? For us not to be fearful?
The time, because these surveys are done in the homes of people. They have their numbers, they know who they are, they're normally
Wait, so what you're trying to say is that because these are people who are surveyed and the SWS knows their number, so you're saying that these people who are surveyed are afraid to know the answer. Now that's a direct attack on SWS, because SWS is not supposed to be saying the names, knowing, divulging the numbers. Now, Ressa, that's stupidity. I don't know why the international community is trusting this woman.
are given by their village chiefs, the barangay captains. How do you account for fear, right? So not saying that President Duterte isn't popular, because I think his homespun this kind.
Hey, if you're saying that he's popular, and you also say that he's feared, question: if you are feared but you are popular, you're still popular, right? Because you are feared, but usually when you're feared and people are angry at you, you will not be popular, right? And what you're saying is that the SWS is slanted because the people who are surveyed are afraid to give the right answer. But if it's for your cause or for your opinion, there's no problem. Are you stupid?
Of, the guy you want to have a beer with, the grandfather you want to have a beer with, that's the narrative. I think that's appealing.
Yes,
but having said that, how do you count for fear, right?
Death by 1,000 cuts. How do you count for fear? May pinaghanda ang mga linya itong bruhang ito.
Interesting question, and I tell you what that plants in my mind a different idea about fear. Maybe for you, and let's be honest, for a relatively elite personality living in a nice part of Manila with perhaps more security than most Filipinos, it is easy for you to focus on the threats to freedom which you feel and the fear you talk about. But what about the other Filipinos whose fear is much more street level? It's much more about the insecurity. And your Rappler website has made a point of investigating the drugs war that Duterte has initiated for the last 3-4 years. But the drugs war, according to most Filipinos, has made their streets safer. Yes, they look at the fact that hardly any security personnel have been prosecuted for egregious use of violence, but they also look at the fact that thousands of drug dealers have been taken off the streets, and they like that.
I think that's definitely the narrative, but if you dig deeper into the surveys, number one, and this is based on the UN report, one just released a few weeks ago, you can see that the people who die in the drug war are the poor. And you can also see in those surveys, it's not just the social weather stations, it's also Pulse Asia, you can see that President Duterte's support among the poorest of the poor has dwindled significantly compared to the ABB.
Wait, okay, you are now twisting facts. You are now twisting facts, girl. In the first place, the surveys by itself are done by SWS, but it's not the UN never made a survey. So did the UN make a survey? Of course, we know that the victims of the drug war are the poor. It's because the poor were the community directed with infection of drugs. These are the people who where drugs were dumped, drugs were sold, drugs were marketed. It's because it's difficult to apprehend drug lords and drug peddlers. Of course, they are the ones who would go the streets because they're the desperate ones. Of course, the rich ones would not be caught. Again, what's the freaking problem with you?
People who are wealthy, who can cut the deals. I always say there's three things.
Remember, Maria, so you've been dealing with the rich people. You've been dealing with these individuals. You know what's the problem. You know they cannot be easily caught. In fact, even you. Why? You were untouchables for the longest time. This is the only time that you are touchable. This is the only time that you've been like running like crazy in the international community.
That really characterize living under the age of Duterte. You have to do one of these three things. The three C's: corrupt, coerce, or co-opt. And it isn't the poor that does that. In fact, I would say the poor suffers the most. So you look at this brutal.
Okay, if the poor suffer, of course, there might be a dwindling of the poorest population. Number one, the four P's. Remember, they are the recipients of the four P's. Secondly, if the poor, uh, if the poorest of the poor have dwindled their support for President Duterte, why is it still that the ratings are high? And in fact, even now, um, when people expect that the President Duterte would have maybe the lowest rating, there's a reason for it. The reason is not because President Duterte is failing miserably. The reason is simple, dear. It's a coronavirus. The virus that looks like you, bitch.
War. Depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the police, they'll say, oh, well, maybe about 6,000 to 7,000 people have died.
That's the problem. You can always talk about numbers, and the numbers you create are big numbers. Remember, if they're big numbers, then why are they not? Why are they? Families are coming out. Why are there no families coming out asking for the whereabouts of the 27,000 that you said were killed? You insist on that number, but there's no proof, and you're a journalist. The least that you can give us is proof, not just some words said by people who are your comrades. Dear God.
to that. And then you talk to the human rights groups and they say it's tens of thousands. Our own Philippine Commission on Human Rights places the number at 27,000. That was several months ago, right? So, no, I think you have to look much deeper into the numbers, look at which of the demographics,
Well,
and look at who's winning and who's losing.
Let me ask you a personal question, and be brief if you can.
Sure.
Has the boss of Rappler, which is known for its investigations, including of the drugs war, do you now
Yes.
think very carefully before commissioning any reporter to dig into what is happening on the streets? I'm mindful that journalists have been killed this year. More than 100 journalists have been killed in the last couple of decades in the Philippines. It is dangerous being a journalist. Are you now fearful for your own staff?
That's a really good question. In a way, we've been in fire. And I think the biggest lesson we've learned in the last 4 years is that when there's a Damocles sword hanging over your head, if you let it affect you, then you've lost it. And what we've done is we've doubled down on our investigative reporting. We know it's really important. We know we have to do this now.
Okay. So if you've doubled down on your investigative reporting, why have you not found any other issues with the president? If you claim that he is corrupt, he coerces, and he's a co-op, and he's he's a dictator, why have you found anything? Why?
So I don't actually make the assignments in Rappler, but what I see in our team is this renewed commitment. They're tireless. And we have a young team. Rappler is about 100 people. We're 63% women. The median age is 23 years old. The reporter that President Duterte bullied, he basically faced her down. She was like 26 years old when he did that. So
Wait. So, okay. So when you're supposed to be young, you're not supposed to be bullied. But when you're old, you can be bullied. Remember what Pia Ranada did? She was combative. She was argumentative. She was also a little bit. She was callous. She was disrespectful. What do you want to do? And President Duterte never, tried to deal with her, but she was so full of it. So just because you're young, just because you're a woman, women's liberation, we're supposed to be equal. So just because you're a woman, just because you're young, the older generation should supposed to be kowtowed to you.
no, I think that I don't have to encourage Rappler to do investigative reporting. I think they're doing it on their own. And all I'm trying to do is keep the sky from falling.
Let's talk about international reaction and response to what is going on in the Philippines right now. We have international NGOs like Amnesty International condemning what they call, quote, a policy of large-scale murdering enterprise, they call it. We had, as you said, the UN Human Rights Office report referring to near impunity offered to Philippines security personnel. But what we also see is that consistently over the last 4 years, Donald Trump, for example, has referred to President Duterte as his friend. We see a very close relationship developing between Duterte and the Chinese government. And we see, for example, that the International Criminal Court, which appeared to be ready to investigate what was happening in the Philippines, has essentially been neutralized because the Philippines has refused to recognize its legitimacy. The international community, frankly, has let you down, hasn't it?
I would
Aray ko. That hurt, girl. That hurt. And it's true. It's true, girl.
say that. What I would say is that the Philippines is punching above its weight in terms of determining the geopolitical power balance. It
Really?
really is. When President Duterte took office by September, so he took office in May 2016. By September 2016, he was in Beijing. and he announced the pivot of the Philippines, a key country in the South China Sea conflict, right? What we call the West Philippine Sea. He announced that the Philippines would pivot away from the United States to China and Russia. He tosses this in. What's interesting is this: what happened when the United States pushed against what was happening in the drug war. Last December, the U.S. government actually took away the visa of the man who carried out the drug war. He was the Philippine National Police Chief. He's now a senator, Bato de la Rosa. They took away his visa under ARIA, and the Philippine government was so upset that they canceled part of the a military bases agreement that has gone for a long time. This is a very strong.
Of course, there's a reason for the Philippine government to be upset. Remember, they treated the U.S. government under the Senate, under the two senators. I forgot the names of the. They treated us like we're Myanmar. Myanmar had was charged under the International Criminal Court for its treatment of the Rohingya people. There's no findings on the Philippines, and the Myanmar army chief, the visa was taken because of that. But did the U.S. government wait for the Philippines to be charged in the ICC, even if there's just a finding? And secondly, there's no findings, and we are supposed to be allies because we have a mutual defense treaty. The U.S. does not have a mutual defense treaty with uh, with Myanmar, and yet we are treated in the same line or in the same level as Myanmar. Of course, we should be angry. You should be angry as well. Stupid girl.
Relationship in the past. So the visiting forces agreement, the government canceled it. But here we go again. Just this month, the Philippine government gave notice that they were not going to cancel that, and it's back up.
So my
Hard
point,
to
my
say.
point. Well, you're making my point for me that whatever the detail of difficulties, geostrategic difficulties in relationship between the United States and the Philippines, in the end, there seems to be a sort of brotherhood feeling between Donald Trump and Rodrigo Duterte, and it's not
I see
surprising
what you're
given
saying.
that they are, you could argue, populists of a similar style. They have contempt for much of the media, which we've discussed. They both seem to see journalists, quote unquote, as enemies of the people.
And they
Okay, this you know, I just have to be honest with what has been said. The Philippines do not have a bargaining power. We are not rich. We do not have military might. We do not have, we cannot fight back with these two countries because they are superpowers. All we can do is actually, you know sometimes assert what we can assert, and be proud, have pride and integrity. And the president Duterte has been doing that. And that's the reason why, even if we have been friendly to China, we can still say something bad about China. We can still, you know, uh, decide or tell China, hey, we can do this, we can do that, and we get help from China. In the same manner, we can do that also with the United States. So this is not this is not about taking sides. So I don't see why Ressa is saying that it's fickle because President Duterte cannot decide whether or not he will be with China or be with the United States. This is not a relationship, girl. This is just friendship. This is just cooperation. This is just brotherhood. This is not a relationship. You should not be married to the United States, nor to China.
both, it is true to say, have found a way of communicating through social media, through using Twitter and Facebook platforms in a way that politically is extraordinarily successful.
I would agree.
Okay, first of all, it's only President Trump who's using social media to Twitter. President Duterte does not know how to use social media. He cannot even he does not even have a computer to do that. So not similar.
With you. And I think part of what's important, but let me first answer you that question that you asked, which is Did it let me down? No, absolutely not. I understand the geopolitical power play at work here, but I think what you're seeing both in the Philippines and in the United States is very similar to what's happening in many democracies around the world, including in the UK. And this is the role of technology. Facebook is our internet in the Philippines. There's 71 million Filipinos. We spend the most time on the internet and on social media globally. And I think it's the fifth year running. That's Hootsuite and We Are Social. That's their number. So what's happened is this kind of astroturfing of manufactured consensus, the manipulation of the public at mass scale.
Okay, hindi ko na kaya. Okay, Ressa, first of all, before the 2016 elections, you did not know the power of social media. In fact, you look down on social media. You look down on bloggers like me. You look down on bloggers who supported President Duterte. There was very little bloggers who supported the other candidates. The numerous ones came supported Duterte. Why is that? Because of course, uh, we cannot compete with mainstream media because you look down on us. In fact, when I was given a credential for the CN as a blogger, what people were, Rappler said something about having no qualifications to do so, and so there's so many others. So the reason why you are now in the position you are now, wherein you had to be to play the astroturfing, is because you looked at social media and said that it's we're below you. We're below you. Social media is it's not mass media, and you had to discover it, the sad way or the difficult way, and it hurt.
Using Facebook has happened here in the Philippines. You asked about the popularity of President Duterte. That's partly buoyed by a propaganda machine that we got clobbered for exposing.
Okay, you were not clobbered for exposing it, dear. It was just that when President Duterte was elected, there was no social media machinery. Maybe if there was, I was not part of it. But you have to admit that President Duterte became powerful, became popular because mainstream media was unfair to him. And that's the reason why people went to social media. Because you forgot that many Filipinos supported President Duterte or became curious of President Duterte because mainstream media was not giving him any exposure. And if people really want a candidate to win, people support the candidate. I am not political, but I supported him because I saw how you tried to find a way to, not to be equal in the treatment of these candidates, and it's your fault.
2016.
But
This is
Maria,
part of the
Maria,
reason.
I'm going to have to interrupt because that's so. What you are suggesting is that democracy doesn't work anymore. If you are talking about quote unquote manipulated public opinion, as you've just done, then you're undermining and delegitimizing the notion that the people have a right to choose their governors. If you're saying
And let me include this. If your money if social media is about manipulating or social conditioning, is she not doing that as well? Death by a thousand cuts. Oh, ano yan? She's, repeating and repeating it again. And she was one who said, every time you repeat something a thousand times, people think it's true. Now she's doing that. She's the one doing social conditioning, mind conditioning.
their opinions are somehow fake or false, where is democracy?
That's exactly what I'm saying, that democracy is essentially dead. And part of what killed it are social media platforms that have become behavioral modification systems. If you look at what's happened all around the world, starting in 2017, studies have shown that cheap armies on social media are cutting down democracy, rolling it back. In 2017, it was in 27 countries. In 2018, that doubled. In 2019, it was up to 70 countries. And these are different research studies, right?
But
so
this
the
is
problem
dangerous
we have
territory.
right now.
This is, if I may say so,
Well,
dangerous territory, because you're
Sure.
suggesting to me that President Duterte, in the end, is illegitimate and doesn't have a mandate, when patently,
No,
on
that's
paper,
not what I'm saying.
this man has an
That's-
extraordinary mandate.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, first of all, he doesn't have an extraordinary mandate. He was one of 5 presidential candidates he had out of.
Hey girl, the reason why you're he has the mandate because the Constitution said that everybody is plurality of votes and majority of votes. It's not our fault. Remember, we are multi-party system. So why are you trying to why are you trying to lower, or why are you trying to minimize the win of the president? In the same way that the other persons who became presidents of the Philippines never won by a majority vote.
61 or 62 million voters, he had 16 million votes. That's what elected President Duterte. That's okay. Of 5, he won the majority of the 5, right? But beyond that, what I am saying is that the new information ecosystem actually allows lies laced with anger and hate to spread faster than facts. When a lie is told a million times.
Okay, let me say this. Are you not? Did you not? Did Rappler never lie? Did you not lie? Did you not post something that are lies? So why are you saying that, you know, uh, lies are being propagated and acting as if you never done it? The reason why mainstream media has become, has become so toxic is because in the beginning you started all these lies, and then when people got angry, people went to social media became stronger, then that's the time you say, oh, they're lies. Remember, it takes two to tango. You started those lies. You made those lies in the beginning when there was still no social media. You were doing those things even before. So stop saying that you're not complicit in this.
Today's age, when I am attacked a million times with criminal, it becomes a fact. And this is what's wrong. Because if you don't have integrity of facts, you cannot have integrity of markets, and you certainly can't have integrity of elections.
Okay, let me stop you there. It criminal. What were you doing before? Acarpio, criminal. Napoles, criminal. What were those things? The reason why people now have a problem with you is because you don't. It's because clearly, you have you had so many chances to be truthful, but you never did. There were so many instances when we proved for ourselves that you were not telling the truth.
This is the problem with democracy.
A final thought then. I'm very mindful that you returned to the Philippines from the United States after the People Power Revolution of, I believe it was 1986, and you made your life in the Philippines after that. And there was so much hope around then of a different kind of politics in your country. Here's what one Filipino lawyer who moved to Australia recently has written, Jason Lamchek. He says, in terms of corruption, the post-people power governments became indistinguishable from the Marcos regime. The only
Correct.
difference was the rhetoric of human rights and democracy, which people have increasingly come to regard as a sham. Isn't that the truth, that Duterte is in power and, quote-unquote, so successful because the post-people power politics of the Philippines simply failed the people?
I think I would agree that post-people power was a failure. We had endemic corruption. We replaced one set of leaders with another who then created their own. I mean, we've always said there are 8 oligarchical.
And okay, you're saying that, but why are you supporting these people? Why are you not calling them? Why did you not call them out before? Why did you not, in your own state, in your own flesh and blood, say If this is not the proper, if there are, if there are still the same group of criminals and the same group of corrupt people, why did you keep quiet? Why did you allow yourself to proliferate and marinate with them?
But the difference is this, right? The trickle down effect didn't trickle down. There was a perfect storm, and this happened globally. This is part of the reason you're seeing a trend back to a form of, I would say, almost fascism, right? Because liberal democracy didn't deliver its promise. But having said that, we should not be moving the other direction, and that is the challenge to every democracy here.
That is the problem with your argument. You are saying that because the liberal democracy is not working, then people are going back to a little bit into fascism or into a little bit more, more autocratic form of government. But here's the problem, dear. How can you force people to go the liberal way when for how many years we have done the liberal way and all we got was being screwed over, including you screwing us over? So why? How? How are you supposed for us to follow democracy, full liberal democracy, when in fact terrorists are killing us? We cannot even make a law to protect ourselves. So liberal democracy always, ha, expect us. For 30 years we've been doing that. What did we get ourselves into? We are most terrorized as a country. You know, we are the one of the most, so many corruption cases. And did you ever say something? The only thing that you were against was the Muslim problem.
Part of what's enabled that is social media. When the gatekeepers, the journalists, the news organizations used to be gatekeepers, we kept the public sphere. We all
Okay, you were never gatekeepers. In fact, you never wanted anything to do with social media to begin with. You didn't like, you treated social media as some inferior form of you know of communication because anybody can just go to social media. So remember those times. Remember you know when you never even recognize that there are bloggers and you would call them, inferior. They're not part of any category even if they would write something. And remember, you even myself, I learned that, even that as a lawyer and as a professor of international law, a high school graduate who was a journalist even called me to be unqualified to have an ASEAN press ID. That's how little you have seen social media. And now, so you did not claim to, you never wanted to become gatekeepers. The only because remember you were the mainstream media had also proliferated so many fake news in social media. Why? Because there's no liability there. But when you saw the power of social media, that's the time you said, oh, we have to gatekeep it. And what were you doing? You are the fact checker of Facebook. Is news? Have you not fact checked all those negative things? You did, right?
read on the facts. Now that the gatekeepers are tech companies, the abdication of that responsibility has had huge impact. And what we're seeing now is the growth of, oh my gosh, I'm even going to say almost like fascism all around the world. And this is scary for me here in the Philippines
Because
because
you
we're
freaking
one of the
started
first
it.
signatories for the
You
UN,
allowed it.
the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And yet I see Filipinos, things I would have thought would have been unbelievable. Filipinos are saying it's okay to kill. Filipinos saying that, democracy doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't. But I guess this is where I would like to see Filipinos weigh in. We shouldn't look away. We should make an active choice. And when you see your
The only time democracy is not working is when people who say they are democratic, but they're not, including people like you. Because that is a hypocritical stance that maybe democracy doesn't work. Remember, Remember, you have been supportive of administrations who have actually killed people, killed farmers, put our military to be slaughtered by the Muslim separatists, and never said anything. Never even been a critic of these individuals. You were Ninoy's friend. Nina liked you.
It's getting pushed back when I personally saw my rights being violated when that happens. Are we going to accept that? Because then that will fundamentally change democracy.
So
maybe we should.
Yeah, so we have to end, but I'm just thinking, never mind the threat of prison now hanging over your head, you continue this fight.
It's not just about prison. The journey is the battle, because I think there's so much more at stake.
Okay, such a hypocritical statement. If you really are for the rights of people, in the past years of administrations, you have seen rights being trampled. You have seen rights being tossed to the ground. Have you said anything to the point of being so being a critic, openly criticizing the government? No, because you got all the perks. The reason why you're angry against President Duterte is President Duterte, number one, knew that something is wrong with their company, and he was not even the one who filed the case. So sinasabi mo na ngayon lang dahil ikaw ang natira. For dati wala ka naman sinasabi eh.
If it was just me, I'd be quiet. Why not? But there's
You've been quiet before. Remember? Why why now?
so much at stake for us right now.
Really?
I became a journalist in 1986, and I'm a journalist today. I'm at my most senior, and I want to make sure that I do the right thing for democracy, for journalism.
Maria Ressa, thank you.
Nakapikon. Nakapikon? Anyway, ayun lang. Well, that's the reason why, that's the reason why I am frustrated because no matter what we do, there will be people who would have self-interest, who would come in and act as if she's a saint and she's God's gift to press freedom. First of all, nobody has even tried to stop her saying truth or lies. Nobody. Of course, when somebody was affected and it was proven, the courts were it was there was a trial and she was convicted. What's wrong with that? Does it mean that just because you are a journalist, you cannot be, every time you are charged and you are convicted, it's not your fault, but it's government's fault, so you cannot commit a crime? Even if you would say that, um, have you if the government really is against journalists, how many journalists have been stymied to say something? Did the government close Rappler? Rappler continues. Did the government try to stop ABS-CBN from doing the online thing? Did not. Did the government try to uh, bulldoze those who are against or saying something wrong against or even false against the government? No. Were you stopped from entering the Philippines or even stopped from going out of the Philippines? No. Were you killed? No. So that is the only frustration I have. And I think the Filipinos, the reason why the Filipinos are angry at you is because it's clear that you have an agenda. It's clear that you want something to happen. It's clear that you're working for somebody. And I think if you believe in God, may kalalagyan ka din. Okay.